In a few minutes, Steve is going to tell you about himself and his vision for a brighter future for all Texans. But I'd like to start off by thanking Schertz Creek Beer Garden for hosting us. Small businesses are, thank you. Mike is the owner, and he actually just retired yesterday, I think. So this is his retirement project. He's a really nice guy, deserves all the business he can get out here, all the support. Anyway, so we thank Schertz Creek. Small businesses are the heart of the community, and we're very proud to be here. The owner, Mike, and his family and staff have worked really hard to provide a great evening for all of us. Before Steve comes up, I thought it would be helpful to hear from those that have seen his character, his competence, and his compassion in action. First, we have Evan Garcia. Evan was a student of Steve's at UTSA. He's going to tell you what it's like to learn from Steve.
Go Evan!
Hello. Thank you guys. So, good evening. I'm Evan Garcia, and it's a privilege to stand here today and speak to y'all about Professor Schwab, as I know him, and his lasting impression on my education, my leadership, and my views. So I knew him as my professor, and I was in his healthcare administration class. I saw firsthand the kind of person he was. But even beyond the classroom, he's demonstrated lifelong commitment and service, notably through his career in his military. So his character is the foundation of who he is. Whether he's in uniform or in the classroom or even in the community, Professor Schwab is someone who leads with integrity and humility. So in the class, he wouldn't just ask us questions with simple answers. He liked to pick our brains. He would ask us stuff that wasn't, if you would say like, how's your day? I would say good. And he'd be like, but why? And we would want to elaborate on that. He wasn't really a fan of simple responses. He would always, again, pick our brains. He taught us leadership and networking, always thinking outside the box. And he also taught us that life isn't just black and white. There's more to it. He held us at high ethical standards, not just to prepare us for a career in healthcare, but also to teach us about responsibility that comes with leadership. The next one is going to be competence. I think competence defines him because, number one, he holds a doctorate degree in economics. And also, he has a bunch of years of hands-on experience in healthcare and has served both civilians and service members. He understands that policy translates into practice. He doesn't speak in theory, he speaks from experience. That's the kind of insight I think we need in Texas. Someone who has seen laws and how they affect people, especially in critical areas like healthcare, veteran services, and public health. Professor Schwab is always learning. Every time he would come into class, he would always have a different book or tell us about a different article that was just published or that he just read. But perhaps I think the biggest and most important thing that I've admired about Professor Schwab is going to be his compassion. Whether he's supporting our students, or mentoring young professionals, he always listens. He cares and he acts. In every conversation I've ever had with him, I have felt seen, I have felt challenged to grow, and I've also felt supported. I feel like empathy is a trait that not a lot of people have anymore, especially in leadership, and that's exactly what will make a powerful voice for the people. I remember he would make us students have one-on-ones with him, which is very rare in college. I've been in college for 4 years, I graduate, and there's only one person who's ever had a schedule, and that's me, Professor Schwab. I've never met any of my professors on a personal level besides with Professor Schwab. So I think Professor Schwab is not new to no service. I believe that he's simply expanding how he serves, especially with the community. I think he's shown us that he can lead in military. He showed us that he can lead us students in the classroom, and now I believe he can lead us in legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Next, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Colonel retired Alan Jones. Alan was Steve's supervisor in the Army from 2018 to 2021, and we'll let you know what it was like to work with and lead Steve Schwab. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Colonel Alan Jones.
Hey, good evening, friends, neighbors, fellow citizens.
Hey, tonight I stand before you not just as a supporter of Steve, but as someone who has the honor of serving alongside him. You see, Steve and I go back. We're both proud veterans of the United States Army, both having served in the global war on terrorism. Him in Iraq, me in Afghanistan. But more than sharing the same uniform, we shared the same mission: to lead with integrity, to serve with purpose, and to put others before ourselves. In 2018, Steve was assigned to serve under me at Fort Sam Houston. And I tell you this, I was grateful every single day that Steve Schwab was on my team, because he didn't just wear the uniform, he lived the values it stood for: leadership, duty, respect, honor, selfless service, integrity, personal courage. Those aren't just words on a poster. These are the Army values, and Steve embodied them every day, whether in a combat zone or in the quiet moments when no one was watching. He didn't choose the easy path, he chose the right one, again and again. And those values didn't stand behind him when he took off the uniform. He carried them into every role he's had since, whether as a father, a neighbor, a professor, his students, his community, his state, or his country. Steve has never stopped putting others first. I've seen firsthand what kind of leader Steve is. I've seen the integrity, the courage, the unwavering commitment. And let me tell you something, if I were back in the fight today, I'd want Steve Schwab by my side. And if you want someone who will fight for you, stand up for you, and never waver from what's right, you want Steve Schwab representing you in the Texas legislature. In these times, leaderships matter more than ever. We need leaders who won't back down from tough decisions, leaders who carry the weight of responsibility with strength and humility, leaders who see public service not as a stepping stone, but as a solemn duty. As someone who has commanded soldiers and stood shoulder to shoulder with Steve Schwab, I can tell you this: he doesn't seek power, he seeks to serve. That's the kind of leader we need in our community, the kind of leader we will put people above politics, principle above popularity, service above self. Tonight, I ask you to join me in supporting Steve Schwab, because this isn't just about an election, it's about the kind of community we want to build, the kind of future we want to create. With Steve Schwab, we get a leader who has proven time and time again that he will do what is right, even when it's hard. A leader who has already sworn an oath to defend and serve, and who continues to honor that oath every single day of his life. Let's put that kind of leadership to work for us. Let's elect Steve Schwab, because he's not just ready to serve, he's never stopped serving. Thanks.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to bring up Steve Schwab himself.
I was 11 years old in the summer of 1991. One July evening, it was just my parents and me. My older brother was away at sleepaway camp and I had gone to bed. My mom came in to wake me and tell me that we had to take my dad to the emergency room. I was tired and confused. My dad had always seemed completely invincible to me. We sat in the waiting room for what seemed like forever, only for the doctor to tell my dad to go home, take an aspirin, and call his primary care doctor in the morning. Probably we were home for an hour or two before my mom woke me up again and said we're going to the other emergency room in town. There, they rushed my dad into surgery and told him that he had waited until morning, he wouldn't have had his leg anymore. They were going to have to amputate. Fortunately, that didn't happen and he kept his leg. But that was the beginning of a long and difficult journey for my dad, my family, and me. While the government wouldn't acknowledge it for years, my dad was suffering from complications due to Agent Orange poisoning he had picked up in Vietnam. Flash forward 3 years, it was September, and we were expecting company for dinner. I was out playing baseball with my best friend, as I did almost every day, and my mom called me in to tell me that there had been an accident. My dad had just gone back to work after yet another surgery when he was hit by a truck. He was an area manager for a convenience store that also held a gas station. He was out taking some readings off the gas tanks when a truck pulled in and ran over his foot. When the truck moved off his foot, he fell and broke his tailbone. So he broke all the bones in his foot and his tailbone. That was the beginning of the end, as my dad was never able to return to work, although he tried multiple times. Over the next few years, I watched him spiral into depression. When he couldn't provide for his family as we ran up debt that he couldn't pay, and collection agents called my home every day. My dad had been my hero, always joking, full of dad jokes and puns, but he was never the same. Things got worse as he was diagnosed with PTSD and bipolar disorder, in addition to his now debilitating physical ailments. In 1998, I was accepted into the George Washington University, a good private university that cost way more than we could afford. I don't know how he did it, but my dad's words to me were, your job is to get in, my job is to pay for it. Somehow he got loans needed to send me. So my first semester, I joined Army ROTC to help offset the cost. I wouldn't be here where I am today if I hadn't had the opportunity that both my parents and the Army provided for me. My dad died almost 12 years ago now, cared for by my mother for almost 20 years. I'll never forget how social and active my mother was when I was a child. She gave up all of that to make sure that my father wasn't alone. If anyone's ever been through that, it's not just the difficulty of the care, but it's the loneliness that comes with it that is probably the hardest. No matter how hard it was, my mom always put on a happy face for my brother and me. I owe a huge debt to my parents I can never repay, but only try to pay forward. I tell that story not for sympathy or tears, but to explain why my worldview is that we all need each other. The world is full of problems, but I believe, probably more than anything else, that any problem can be solved if we are willing to work and support our fellow human beings. I was also shaped by my experience in the Army. I spent over 3 years in Iraq witnessing both the best and worst community has to offer. I saw what happens when fear and hate rule, but I also saw people, black and white, American and Iraqi, Sunni and Shia, work together and find light in dark times. I saw darkness, but I also saw hope. One of my responsibilities was help building up an Iraqi emergency medical system, focus on our partnerships with the Iraqi Army and the Iraqi police. Traditionally, the Iraqi police were from one religious tradition and the Iraqi Army from another, and I was told they could never coexist. However, cautious but optimistic, we decided to arrange some joint emergency medical training for both of them, since they had to be able to coordinate. Under the highest levels of stress, I saw two disparate groups work together to save lives. Later in my career, the Army invested in me, sending me to school for 3 graduate degrees, including an MBA from Baylor and a PhD in applied economics from the Wharton Business School. I got to mentor young soldiers and junior officers. I got to teach future leaders. My final position in the Army, I was the chief financial officer at BAMC right here in San Antonio, the military health system's largest hospital and only level 1 trauma center. Today, I'm a professor at UTSA. Should I earn your vote and be elected, I'll have to give up my position due to state law. I love my job and didn't plan to seek office or do anything else with my life, honestly. But times being what they are, I can't stay on the sideline. When I was younger, I was a Republican. In my first political involvement, I went door to door in New Hampshire for John McCain during his first run for office in 2000. I was a Republican because I believed that was the party that would keep government out of your life, except when there was a compelling reason why your actions affect somebody else. I was a Republican because I believed that party stood for fiscal responsibility. Now, I understand many Republicans believe that, but it's certainly no longer how Republican office holders vote, and maybe never was. In 2016, I switched to the Democratic Party. Today, I'm running as a Blue Dog Democrat. If you're not familiar with the term, it originally came from a group of conservative Democrats. But I use it today to mean that I believe in bipartisanship, market solutions, and fiscal responsibility while providing for everyone the opportunity to succeed that my parents provided for me without the trauma that they had to endure to do so. Today, I'm a Democrat because I believe everyone should have access to affordable health care, as I did in the Army and continue to do so as a retiree. I'm a Blue Dog because I want to do that by building on the Affordable Care Act, which you may recall originated as a Republican market-based solution. While I'm optimistic, I'm also realistic enough to know that will be a fight and we'll need to elect more than one moderate to pass it. Yet there are simple things that we can do to make your lives better now. For instance, let's talk about co-pays on prescription drugs and preventive care. Without getting too wonky, let me tell you why co-pays exist. As insurance developed, it was common for people to change their behavior since they didn't have to pay out of pocket. You can think about the extra plate you might get at a buffet, even though you're not really that hungry anymore, but you already paid for it. Copays were introduced to keep skin in the game, so that you only get that extra plate if you're actually hungry. And this makes perfect sense in lots of areas of healthcare. But it doesn't make any sense with prescriptions for chronic illnesses. I've never known anybody who got addicted to a statin or to their blood pressure medication. So why be charged for it? All these copays make it less likely that you'll be able to refill your drugs or get your appropriate care, leading to more emergencies and higher overall healthcare costs. Getting rid of them will be both a win for insurers and for patients. That's the kind of win-win I look for. Today, I'm a Democrat because I believe in a strong working class. If you work for a living, you should be able to live off your work. I'm a blue dog because I believe in free trade and that we achieve this through investing in public schools, community colleges, and workforce training programs, not in protectionism or bailouts. Today, I'm a Democrat because I believe that a woman has the right to choose what happens to her own body, that this is a deeply personal decision that should be made by families, not the government. I'm a blue dog because I'm willing to work across the aisle for appropriate rules to protect both the mother and the baby. I'm a Democrat because I believe in government services. I'm a blue dog because I believe that the government is inherently inefficient and that while we need to spend our limited resources wisely, our goal should not be efficiency per se, but to maximize cost effectiveness. Let me give you an example. I worked as a financial controller for the military health system. The military is required to have hospitals in remote areas, so like Fort Irwin, which is in the middle of the desert in California, or Fort Polk, which is in extremely rural Louisiana. These hospitals have to have intensive care units in case a service member gets injured while training. Now, running an ICU requires a full-time staff, you need nurses, you need doctors, you have some really expensive equipment. A private sector hospital would never run an ICU if they expect maybe to have one patient at a time. It's extremely inefficient. Yet the military can't just open an ICU when someone gets hurt. It doesn't work that way. And they have a responsibility to provide care. For years, military health has been hammered about this inefficiency. But our goal was never to make this efficient. It will never be. Our goal was to limit the costs while maximizing value. In this case, quality care for our service members. We see the same challenge with nearly all government services. The post office has come under attack for being inefficient, but there's a reason that private companies won't deliver to remote areas. It's simply not profitable. Our schools come under attack while teachers work for pennies on the dollar. Our libraries come under attack, yet provide books, internet access, and community programming for those that might not have any other way of accessing those materials. I should tell you, my mother was a librarian, so libraries have a special place in my heart. Today, I'm a Democrat because I believe that climate change is a real, man-made existential threat. I'm a blue dog because I believe we can innovate ways to deal with it. Now, more progressive Democrats may say I'm overly optimistic, and extreme Republicans may say I'm naive. But I want to talk about other unsolvable problems. For all of human history, up to about 100 years ago, 40 to 50% of children died before the age of 5. Today, about 2% of children die worldwide. In 1961, President Kennedy announced a trip to the moon. It took us only 8 years to get there, less than 70 years after the Wright brothers took flight. For years, green energy was a pipe dream. Today, the cost of solar is 6 cents per kilowatt hour, which is lower than the cost of oil, coal, or natural gas, and without the pollution and health consequences. We need to invest in the infrastructure to use this, though. So speaking of efficiency, we can easily do this in Texas, but it's really inefficient to ask homeowners to put panels on their roofs one at a time. Instead, we need to invest in solar farms and the distribution system. That will bring down the cost of energy, provide shade, and ensure we have sufficient capacity for the next deep freeze. This brings me to infrastructure. After World War II, the U.S. invested heavily in infrastructure. We built the interstate highway system. We built airports, making major investments in runways, terminals, and air traffic control. We even brought electricity and clean water to every corner of our country. Those investments fueled decades of American growth and prosperity. We have not kept up, though, and we are paying the price for it. It's past time for Texas to invest in the next 50 years of development. After World War II, the U.S. paid for its investments through rapid economic development. This wasn't happenstance or luck. It was due to both investments in infrastructure and investments in small businesses. Small businesses like right here at Church Creek Beer Garden and the hardworking families and staff that run them are the economic engine that moves us forward. But that engine requires fuel. Right now, the fuel is being choked through overregulation. Now, don't get me wrong, there are many regulations in place for very good reasons. But unfortunately, some are used by large businesses to reduce competition. For example, small family-owned restaurants can get fined or even shut down over small paperwork mistakes that have nothing to do with actual food safety. Big corporate chains have compliance teams to handle it. But a small local diner might lose their livelihood. Let me tell you, the big chains are all supporting of these rules, right? They spend a lot of money lobbying for regulations that they know the small businesses can't compete with. Now, that's not fairness, that's bureaucracy hurting people who are trying to build something for their community. So you have to remember that every big business started as a small business. I'm in favor of a bottom-up review of regulations so that we can amend the ones that don't make sense. Not only will this fuel our economic engine and make it easier for small businesses to thrive, but the additional competition will actually bring down your costs. I know there are many issues I haven't discussed tonight, some of which I may not even be aware of. I'm reasonably intelligent, but I'm also smart enough to know that I don't know everything, or even all of the issues. But I promise you to listen and learn. Anyone who's willing to talk, I'm willing to hear you, even if you disagree with me. I aim to represent all of you, including those that don't vote for me. For the rest of the evening, I want to hear from you. Tell me what's pressing so that I can represent you and your goals. I've told you a lot about what I believe, but more than anything, I believe in people. I've been to many countries across 4 continents, including Iraq, Kenya, China, Ukraine, among others. One thing I've learned is that we all want the same things: safety, physical and economic security, a good job, a happy and healthy family. We can achieve all of this if we are willing to work together. Democrats and Republicans, immigrants, native-born, old and young, rich and poor. We are stronger together. Now comes the hard part. Campaigns don't run on love or optimism. Alan Schoolcraft is incredibly well funded. I have to campaign while working full-time while he can be out knocking on doors. It will take all of us to win and bring this vision to fruition. I need both donations and volunteers. I understand times are tough, so please give what you can, both in terms of your time as a volunteer and whatever dollars you can spare. Lane will talk more about how to get involved in just a moment. But let's roll up our sleeves and get to work together, building a brighter future for all of us.
All right, once again for Steve. That was fantastic. It really means it. I have lived in the same neighborhood as Steve for the last almost 2 years. Took us a little while to get to know each other because I'm on the section of the neighborhood that has a little more of the retiree area. We didn't even know that kids were in the neighborhood for a while. But we connected, and Steve really is everything he said, and he has a lot to share and help grow our community. So I thank you all for being here. Thank you for standing with us. Thank you for supporting us. I want to take a moment to recognize Steve for his tremendous courage and conviction. He didn't have to run for office, he chose to, and he's going to fight for our schools, access to health care, for jobs that pay a living wage, and government that works for everyday Texans, not just the powerful few. More importantly, that takes heart. I'm incredibly proud to be Steve's campaign manager. I've seen firsthand how deeply he cares about our communities, how hard he works, and how seriously he takes this responsibility. He's not running for headlines. He's running to serve and make a real change that helps everyday Texans, everyone in District 44, everyone in our community. But we can't do this alone. We need help. That's where I come in. So far it's just been Steve and I and some people helping in little pockets along the way. But over the next few days I am going to be breaking down jobs that we need help with. We're continuing the campaign. We wanted to get this big kickoff event going, get our social media started. You can follow us Instagram, TikTok, there's Facebook, and then there's an ActBlue donation QR code. So if you would like to volunteer, if you have time, I know everybody is constrained on time and finances, and everybody is busy. Any pockets of time that people can give would be fantastic. So over at this table where Steve is sitting, we have volunteer sign-up sheets and donation sheets, and there is a petition. So to get on the ballot, we need 500 signatures. You need to be a resident of District 44, and we would need your voter ID number, which we can help you find. And there's a disclaimer that we have to read to you over there if you decide to sign the petition, but it just states that you would need to vote. If you choose to vote in the primary, you would need to vote on the Democratic ticket so that your vote still counts. If you were to vote on the Republican ticket after signing this petition, then it vetoes the vote. It is what it is at this point, but the petition is over there. We need 500 signatures to get Steve on the ballot. So spread the word. We have until December for that, so we're going to be traveling through the community, chatting with people, getting to know people, letting people meet Steve and learn about him. And anyway, so volunteer sheets are over there, donation sheets. We have some facts about the recent school vouchers that were just signed into law today. You can see the numbers from, those are just a select few schools in our district. We have a lot more, and a lot of very small school districts in our district that are losing a lot of funding. So the information is there. There's a QR code for the website. You can look up all the schools in our area and see what they've lost. And we can talk to Steve about that and see what we can do for the future. So with that, this is our moment. Let's stand with Steve and let's stand for Texas. Thank you all for coming out. We really appreciate it.